Okay, so this is project 5. We are making the ESP8266 WeatherStation from the WeatherStation kit that we received. The requirements are pretty straightforward for this. We're going to follow the directions in this WeatherStation Getting Started guide here. And this is great. There's a lot of examples at each step of the way and lots of good practice work. And I worked through the whole thing just because I thought it was interesting and I definitely learned a lot. So I would recommend that. And then down at the bottom here is where you actually set up the weather station. So we'll go through that. We're going to get weather data from openweather.com and display it on our OLED display. And then we're going to use the DHT11, which we used in previous projects to get temperature and humidity readings. We're going to push them to ThingSpeak and have like a running chart of the data. And then we're going to download the most recent data from ThingSpeak and display this on our display with the other weather data as well. So for the hardware, everything that I needed came in the WeatherStation kit. So this was the ESP8266, a serial to USB cable, the DHT11, the visual display module, which is the OLED, and then the jumper cables. And then of course I needed my laptop. So in the PDF, it shows you how to connect the LED display to the ESP8266. Everything's really clearly labeled, and actually I didn't use the breadboard, I just connected everything directly. This pin here is VCC, ground, and then we've got our 2 signal pins that'll go to D3 and D4. And we're going to have to specify that in our code. And then we're going to connect the DHT11 just as we did in that earlier module. So connecting the ground, the VCC, and then our data cable is going to go to D6. And we're going to need to specify that in our code as well. And this is again just saying that I didn't use the breadboard, but you totally can if you want to. So we needed quite a bit of software for this project. We needed drivers for our CP2012. We also had to set up the board manager to understand the ESP8266. So you had to install that board manager, and then you had to change which board you were using. So the kit came with a Node MCU, but you might want to double check which board you have if you're doing this yourself. And then there were a few libraries that we needed to install. The first one was for the LED display. The next is for the DHT, specifically for our ESP8266. I installed a Wi-Fi manager to do Wi-Fi a bit differently with some more security. And then you need this WeatherStation library as well. When you install that, you will probably be prompted to also install the JSON parser, but if not, you're going to have to install this JSON parser library. So the first thing that I did was just to check that the Wi-Fi connection was running as expected, as I used this Wi-Fi scan sketch. And then that just connects to Wi-Fi, and then it just looks for available Wi-Fi in your area. And so that was a really quick, easy way for me to know that my ESP8266 was working as intended. But otherwise, there's a WeatherStation demo example file, and for most of what we did, we're just going to use the code as is with that. There are a few things that you have to set up. The first thing is you're going to need to go to openweather.com, and you'll have to sign up and get an API key, and this is so you can access data directly from the website. And then in the WeatherStation demo code, which we'll go through, you have to change the parameters to meet your setup. So this is where we're putting in the D3 and D4 pins that are connected to the display. And then that specific API key, and that's private, so you want to make sure to keep that private. So just doing this step here, you're going to be able to see a WeatherStation on your display screen. It's got 3 frames, it's really clean and nice, and it works great out of the box. The next thing we want to do is we want to adjust the WeatherStation so that we can also display local data that we're pulling off our DHT11. So we're going to use ThingSpeak to display that. You have to sign up for an account and make a channel and set up field 1 for your temperature and field 2 for your humidity. And you're also going to need API keys for that, and you have a specific channel ID. So the way I run this is every 15 seconds, I push the temperature and humidity data to ThingSpeak. And so I had to write a push ThingSpeak function, which we'll go through. And then when I update the data, every 10 minutes, I update my display data, pulling new data from openweather.com. And when I do that, I also pull the most recent temperature and humidity data from ThingSpeak, and I display that in a separate frame. So I had to write the code to create this new frame. And I used quite a few references here, which I'll post my notes so you can see them. But let's run through the code now. So here is my WeatherStation, and this is basically just taken straight from the WeatherStation demo. Note that we incorporated the ThingSpeak client that was provided. This lets us pull data down from ThingSpeak really easily. We changed some parameters so that I'm in the Eastern time zone. You'll need your own API key here for open weather, and you'll need a location ID for where you are currently located so that the weather data you're getting is accurate. I don't want anything in metric, so I needed to change that Boolean. This is where you get your ThingSpeak settings, so you're going to have a read key and a write key along with that channel ID, and you can update how often you want to push to ThingSpeak. I'm just doing it every 15 seconds. So first we'll initialize our display. This is very easy. And then all of these functions came with the demo except for this draw temp hum, which I'll go through, and push ThingSpeak. So those are my additions. So I won't spend too long on the rest of the code, but I will talk about what I added. So in the setup, this is pretty straightforward. I'm using the Wi-Fi manager, which looks for a previous Wi-Fi connection that you had, and if it doesn't find something, then you can log in via your phone, so it's just a little bit more secure. And then I set up my DHT11. This is the pin D6, which was where the data cable was connected, so make note of that. Otherwise, the setup is the same. So in my loop, the first thing I'm going to do, one thing I noticed is that if you haven't pushed any data to ThingSpeak yet, then it's going to pull down basically null data, and then it'll wait 10 minutes before it'll pull more data. So I wanted originally just push my first reading to ThingSpeak before I go to update my data, but we don't want to do that ever again. This is going to update all the weather data, and I just added in one line to add the ThingSpeak data there as well. And then every 15 seconds, I want to push new data to ThingSpeak, and then we'll just loop through that. It'll continue every 10 minutes. We'll update the display, and otherwise we'll just be updating ThingSpeak with our DHT11 data. So these functions are the same. Here's the only line that I added to update data. This is where we get the last item from ThingSpeak. That ThingSpeak client made it really easy, and I didn't have to think too much about that at all. These functions were original. Here's this draw temperature and humidity. So what this is doing is we're going to just the hardest part of this was figuring out the alignment on the display screen for everything, but then it'll get the most recent field values from ThingSpeak, which is going to be, this first one will be our temperature, and the next one will be the humidity, and I'll show you that on the display. And then the final thing that we're going to go over is just this push to ThingSpeak. This is taken directly from the PDF's example of how you make a post request. So what we're doing is we're just setting up a URI, and then here is where we're gonna push that to our ThingSpeak host, and we're just sending it this field 1 and field 2, which is our temperature and humidity reading, and I convert that to Fahrenheit at the beginning based on my metric Boolean. So aside from that, the code's really straightforward. The demo really contained everything, and now I will show you the working WeatherStation. Okay, so here we have our ESP8266. You can see we've got it wired into our DHT11 temperature sensor. The pins are very clearly labeled, and they match with corresponding pins on the DHT11, and then the same situation here for our OLED display, and you can see the pins are lining up just like in the PDF, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. But now if we look at the display, you can see that we've got running temperature data, and that's coming from the temperature website that was connected, and then I added this extra panel here to show us the temperature and humidity data that's coming off the DHT11 sensor. And so what's happening is it's pulling that data down from ThingSpeak. We're pushing it there from the DHT11, and then every 10 minutes these values update, and it'll update the temperature and humidity value based off the ThingSpeak value that's most recent. So then I'll show you the ThingSpeak graph. I have this set to update every 15 seconds. So we'll just watch for a little bit and you should be able to see another point come up. Here we go. So that's a running temperature on the top, humidity there on the bottom, and that's coming off the DHT11. So pretty easy setup and pretty clean and neat looking display.